Is change your enemy or your friend? If you think about a change that's going on in your life right now, are you excited, looking forward to it, really happy? Or are you scared, anxious, nervous, a bit stressed? The exact same thing happens in a workplace change. Sometimes people like the new ways of working. It's new, it's exciting, it's different. Whilst at other times, people feel a bit scared and nervous about it because they like the old ways of working. They're used to it. They don't have to think about it. It's natural. If it's one thing I've learned whilst working for over 20 years and helping nearly 40 different organizations, it's that change is about people, not rocket science. Now, that's a little bit of a double-edged sword because it's not to say that change is simple. It's just that sometimes we make it a bit more complicated than it really needs to be. It's also not to say that people are simple because A plus B does not necessarily equal C when it comes to people, like it does with rocket science. Another thing I have learned is that change is going to happen in our personal and in our professional lives, whether we like it or not. We're going to move house. We are going to change jobs. The organizations are going to go through a restructure. We'll start working with different teams. We'll do different skills and things we never thought we would ever do. When I first came to the UK, I was a student. And when I could work and do what I wanted, I realized I didn't want to work in the industry that I had been studying and working in previously. But I had no idea what it was I wanted to do. So I temped for a while as a personal assistant. And one day, my boss came to me and asked me to design a training course. Now, I had never designed a training course before in my life. So I did a bit of research and found out what it is the business needed and what the people needed. And I designed the course. And I remember coming home that night to my husband and saying, I know what I want to do with my life. There is a McKenzie report that states that back in 1958, the typical lifespan of an organization that was listed on the S&P was 60 years. Now, that's 12. It also states that in 2027, 75% of the organizations currently listed on the S&P will no longer exist. They will merge, be bought out, or go bankrupt. Now, that's a startling statistic to me, because that means organizations have got to change and adapt or die. So now we're in a situation where organizations have to change in order to survive, much less thrive and grow. And so they start to make decisions on change, many times without consulting the people. And then the people have to deal with the ramifications of those decisions and the impact that that has on their roles, on how they do things, and many times on their personal lives. On top of that, there are the external and internal influencing factors on our lives and on change. For example, the political factors that go on within an organization as well as outside an organization between countries, economic fluctuations, social realignments and adjustments, and technology, one of the biggest disruptors of our time, and it's happening at such a fast rate. And yet, sometimes maybe not quite fast enough. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. So when leaders and managers say they don't think people like change, I disagree with them. I think people like change just fine because we deal with it all the time, every day nearly. I think it's much more about the fact that people don't like being changed. A lot of people have heard the analogy that change is a story or a journey. But the questions I ask are, what story do you want to share? And how do you want to travel? And I use the word share very deliberately because change is not a one-man band activity. Even if it's a personal or independent change. For example, if I want to lose weight, which I invariably always want to do, if my very loving and kind husband brings home my favorite chocolate bar or bag of crisps, the chances of me not eating them are slim to none. So I need his help to make sure these things aren't in the house. The other question is, how do you want to travel? Are you the type of person who likes to be 20 paces ahead and use their energy to motivate and keep everybody up a pace? Or are you the type of person who likes to be in the group and you all go down the road together? There are two things you need to do to be future fit and resilient. One, you need to have a vision. What do you want? Where do you want to go? Do you want to go to Manchester or Bristol? The difference is quite stark. And how do you want to feel when you get there? How do you want others to feel? And by others, I mean your friends, your family, your teammates, your colleagues, your line managers, your customers, clients, suppliers, the industry. Because to be future ready, we need to know what it is that we want, not now, but in 10 years' time. None of us have a crystal ball. We don't know when the next disruptors are going to come or what they will be. But if we have an idea of what it is that we want, then we can make decisions today that will prepare us for the future. Because when we come to a crossroads, which we invariably will do within that time frame, we can ask ourselves the question, will this take us closer to or further away from my vision? And based on that answer, we can then decide where we want to put our energies, resources, and our monies. 2, need to use the holistic approach to change. Now, what does that mean? It means all-encompassing. We need to know what is going on around us. How are people thinking and feeling about life at the moment, much less about the change? So that we can help them understand what is going on. The 3 key leadership skills we've got is to stop, breathe, and listen. Because when we do that, we many times find the answers to the questions in which we are seeking. And once we understand what it is we want and the context of what it is we are trying to achieve, then we can start to create a bit of a rough plan as to how we're going to get there through short, medium, and long-term goals. Now, I actually recommend doing this backwards, because if you know what it is that you want, then it's easier to ask the question, what is it that I need to do right before that I can achieve that? What needs to be in place? And that becomes my long-term goals of 7 to 9 years. Then I ask the question again, what is it that I need to have in place right before those long-term goals are achieved? And that becomes my medium-term goals of 4 to 6 years. Then, what is it needs to be in place right before those medium-term goals are achieved? And that's my short-term goals of 1 to 3 years. And it's then, and only then, that I can ask myself the question, what is it that I need to do today, right now, to get started on this journey? Now, this technique can be used to help set our professional goals as well as our personal goals, and as line managers to set the visions and the goals for our teams, business units, and organizations. It also can be used when we're dealing with difficult situations. When I was giving birth to my son, I was having a planned cesarean due to complications that happened with my daughter a few years before. And they got him out, and that was fine. But then that's when things went horribly wrong with me. And I went into anaphylactic shock 7 times. Now, early on, in between consciousness, I remember thinking, ooh, I've seen this on ER. This isn't good. And I kept waiting for Noel Wiley to come in and start telling the doctors what to do. I also started to think about the vision, because most expected parents create a vision of what kind of parent they want to be, what kind of home life they want to create for their child. How do they want to live? What does that look like? How do they want to raise their child? And I started to realize that I may not be around to make this vision happen. So I started to think, what is the one thing I need to tell my husband that he needs to do so that some semblance of my vision is realized? At the same time, my husband is sitting there in the operating theater watching me go into anaphylactic shock 7 times, and the doctors struggle to know what to do and to stop it. And he started to see his vision of the life he had created in his head with his wife and children, and what that was going to look like and be like, and how that was going to manifest. And he started to think, what is the one thing that needs to happen that will enable some semblance of his vision to be realized? And that's when he thought, she needs to hold him. And the doctor said, no, she can't. I even remember thinking at one point, no, I can't, I'm not strong enough. And he said, if this is the one moment my son has to be held by his mother in his life, he will have it now. Now, obviously I didn't die that day. Very thankful for the NHS with that. But many people think that having a vision and understanding the context of that vision with short, medium, and long-term goals is airy-fairy, fluff, a nice to have. But I'm here today to tell you it is critical for survival. The level of complexity and uncertainty is going to continue to increase. Change is at the fastest rate it has ever been. It's also at the slowest rate it ever will be. So we need to be future-ready and resilient, because change is about people, not rocket science. Thank you very much.